Hello everybody, welcome to my channel. My name is Chris and today's video is the Just Our Imagination Challenge. And in this challenge, we have to craft with dice, plastic jug, yarn, and a Band-Aid. Yes, a Band-Aid. I will get more into that later, but with all that being said, let's begin. DIY number 1. All right, in this first project, I have got these little mini wooden dice that I found at the Dollar Tree, and I've also got some Band-Aids, and I'm gonna kill two birds with one stone, as they say. And just FYI, the Band-Aid, that was Craft Away with May, so thanks May, you're a champ. So you guys know who to blame for this. But I'm going to go ahead and take my Band-Aid. And I am going to go ahead and stick that Band-Aid on top of some tissue paper. My tissue paper is actually wrapped around some printer paper. Whether or not this is necessary, I do not know. I just figured it would make it easier to cut. So we're just going to go ahead and stick that on. And I first started by cutting it down the middle. I don't think I really got it truly in the middle because I ended up having to use two Band-Aids for this craft just to get them both the same length. But I am going to trim out the Band-Aid, making sure you can't see any of the tissue paper behind it. And the reason I'm doing this is just so it's not sticky anymore. Okay, and I am just using one of the dice from that package, and I'm going to go ahead and give it a couple of coats of white paint. You can use any white paint you want. Not that you're going to repeat this, but it is actually a very cute project. You can absolutely substitute the Band-Aids for something else, like maybe some ribbon, but so if you do, I use the color Casement, and this is an all-in-one fusion paint, but like I said, use any paint your heart desires. And after I get that dice all painted, I am going to go ahead and sand it. I want a little bit of the wood to show through just to give it a little bit of rustic charm. And I will tell you, this paint, an all-in-one paint, is a lot more difficult to distress than, say, a chalk paint or an acrylic paint. It's some sturdy paint. All right, so I'm going to grab the two ends of the Band-Aids that we cut, and I'm going to go ahead and grab a toothpick. And then I'm going to go ahead and hot glue that toothpick right down the center to the back of the Band-Aid on the little cotton part, and that was just me trimming off the little paper that was still there. But I'm going to put some hot glue down there, and then I want to go ahead and pinch that closed. And I'll be using a little bit more hot glue to make sure it's all secure in place, and I am going to go ahead and do that to both of them. And I'll just apply a little bit of hot glue here and there to make sure it's all tacked down, and I use a very small dot of hot glue. And this is what we're gonna have. Two little bunny ears. So I'm just gonna go ahead and trim off some of the toothpick. And then that's when I realized one of my ears were too short, so I had to grab my second Band-Aid, and I just repeated that process. And I'm going to grab some of my Cottage Rose paint from Folk Art Matte, and right in the center of the Band-Aids, I'm just going to give it a little bit of shading of pink, because you know, anytime you see an Easter bunny, you always see the little pinks inside the ears. So I'm just going to paint that in there. And you know, you could use some burlap fabric to make little bunny ears and paint the insides pink, and that would be so cute. Definitely would be a lot better than using a Band-Aid, but you know, that's what I had to use, so here we go. Okay, next it's time to drill some holes in the top of our dice. And I'm gonna be honest with you, this is my second time doing this. I had to flip it over because I had the holes too close together. So this time I'm gonna drill one hole, slip one of them bunny ears in there so I can get a better idea of where to place the other one. Then I'll go ahead and drill that hole and place the other ear in there. And I do not use any glue, and I'm glad I didn't because this turns out so cute. Cute enough that I think once I'm done with this and my recording, I am probably gonna go ahead and pull those ears out and actually use maybe some ribbon or something for her ears or his ears. And yeah, because it did turn out really cute. Okay, so next it's time to work on his face, and I've got this little heart-shaped button. I have picked these up from Hobby Lobby. They come in an assortment of colors and sizes, and then I've got some floral wire from the Dollar Tree, And I'm going to trim off 6 pieces of that floral wire, a little longer than I think I'm going to need because I'm going to turn these into whiskers. And so I'm going to use 3 pieces on each side of the button for his whiskers. And I'm just going to kind of gather them down at the bottom. I'm going to apply a little bit of hot glue, and then I'm going to put the gathered pieces of that floral wire onto that glue with a little more glue on top. And then I'll just spread them apart. And then I'm going to do the same exact thing for the other side. Just trim me off 3 pieces of wire, kind of pinch and twist them around. Not really twist them, but kind of gather them together at one end. Start applying a little dab of hot glue, set my wire on top of that, add a little more hot glue to the top, and then I'm going to go ahead and hot glue his nose right in the center just about. Would y'all look at that? How cute is that? Oh, I tell you, it's darling. And I'm just going to shape those whiskers how I think they look cute. And then I'm just going to trim a little bit off of the ends, and I'm just going to grab my wire cutters. That way I'm not doing any tugging and pulling. Easy to cute. Oh my goodness, I love it. All right, so I am going to go ahead and with a Sharpie marker, I'm just going to draw his little mouth. And then I'm going to grab me a thicker Sharpie marker and draw his eyes. And his eyes start a little wonky, but they end up okay at the end. I don't have the steadiest of hands to draw. Like I said, it's a hit or miss on whether or not I can draw. And after I play around with those for a little while, I am going to go ahead and go back over his mouth with this thicker Sharpie. Then I want to cover up that bottom section of his ears, so I thought adding some of these little flowers I picked up from Hobby Lobby would be perfect. So I'm just going to pull off some of the little purple flowers, and I'm just going to hot glue those on the top under his ears. And you guys will have to let me know how I did on this Band-Aid and dice challenge. Did I do okay? Did I suck? You can be honest with me. I appreciate any and all feedback. All right, and once I get those flowers on there, this project will be done. And as I mentioned earlier, this is the Just Our Imagination Challenge. This challenge is hosted by Rustic and Lace DIY and Kathy Jo DIYs. This month we have 2 special co-hosts, and that is Z9 Designs and Craft Away with May. Yes, the Band-Aid girl. Love you, May. I will have their links posted in my description box down below, including the playlist. And this playlist will include all of the other crafters who are participating in this month's challenge. So make sure you go and show your love and support. So with all that being said, let's continue. DIY number 2 and our final project. Okay, so in this project, I have got the plastic jug, and my jug is this large creamer container, and I'm just going to remove the label, and I have got my heat tool heating up because I'm going to trim a little bit off of the top. And the more I think about it, I very well could have used an X-Acto knife, but you know, it is what it is. Sometimes you just have them tools you got to use every now and then so you can tell your husband that it was all worth it, that you use it. So here we go. And I definitely recommend that if you ever use one of these, you put on some kind of heat-resistant gloves to protect your hands. I've burned myself in the past, so definitely recommend these. Now, my intentions were to cut a little bit above where it curves, but as everybody watching this who has ever DIY'd on something round, you know, when you go round and round and you don't pay 100% attention to where you're cutting, you usually get off track. And that's what happened. I got off track. I ended up cutting at an angle, and then my angle proceeded to bring me right to where it curved. So I ended up having to kind of straighten that out. Okay, so I left this part in here, one, because Cami wanted to say hi. And for those of you who miss her, say hello. But I had started wanting to use some nautical rope. And my idea behind this is to kind of give it a little bit of a trim around the top. And I thought nautical rope might work. But after I got it on there, I didn't like it. But I just wanted to show you this really quick. And after I got that nautical rope on there, I took it outside, spray painted it with just a flat white spray paint. And this is what it looks like. And next I'm going to take some joint compound, and I want to give this plastic container some texture. I don't want it to look plastic. So I'm just going to go ahead and stir this joint compound up because it got a lot of moisture in there. I don't know if this stuff is hygroscopic or what, but it is definitely needing to be stirred. So after I get that stirred up, I am just going to grab my little silicone spatula, and this thing's becoming quite versatile. But I am going to go ahead and just start spreading that joint compound in a vertical motion, if you will. And I like that because it leaves those little ridges. You know, when you spread something, you get those little high points on it. I thought that would be pretty on a vase. So I proceeded to do that all the way around. Okay, so this is the next day after that joint compound has dried. And this is when I realized I just don't like that jute rope, or I'm sorry, that nautical rope on the top. I just thought it was too bulky with what I had planned on doing with it. So I am going to rip it off. And once I get that torn off, I'm going to grab me some masking tape, and I'm just going to start putting it around the top rim of this container just to give me something that the hot glue will stick to a little bit better than just the plastic. And I do that all the way around the rim. And I don't care if it, you know, masking tape can get a little scrunched up a little bit. I don't care if it does that because, for one, I'm going to be covering it. And for two, if I wasn't covering it, it would just be nice texture. And after I get that masking tape on there, I have got some chunky yarn that I am going to use in place of the nautical rope, which worked out great since yarn is one of our challenge items. And thank you to Tiffany for reminding me that yarn was on the list. Because it completely slipped my mind. I'm just so used to there only being 3 challenge items, and this month there's 4, so I never even questioned myself. So thank you, Tiffany. Now I'm going to go ahead and take this yarn. Now, because I had that nautical rope so thick, I've got quite a bit of surface. What I should have done was just wrap this around the rim twice, once on the inside, once on the top, kind of towards the outside, and that would have been a gorgeous top to this vase. But I didn't want to pull out the joint compound again and spackle over that, so I decided just to go ahead and use this yarn to cover the entire section that is not covered by that joint compound. But later on, you'll see that I decide to use some spackling to go over that because my initial thought process wasn't looking right. So yeah, I could have done the one little piece around the top, but hey, it is what it is. Hey, this is a plastic jug. I'm trying to make it look like pottery. Okay, so once I get that yarn on, I'm going to grab my Fusion all-in-one paint in the color Casement, and I am going to apply that to the yarn that we put on the rim, and I'm really just pouncing it in there, trying to just get it down in as best as I can. And once I get that put around, I'm looking at it, and To me, it still looks like I painted over cotton. That's what it looked like. So that's when I decide to go ahead and pull out the spackle, and I'm going to spread some spackle around this top and then let it dry overnight. That's what I was trying to avoid with pulling out the joint and compound. I didn't want to wait overnight once again for this to dry. I wanted to get it done, get this video edited, but well, that didn't work out like that. So, and of course, this is when I realized you could have just applied your your 2 little strands along the rim and used that spackling to fill in where you pulled the nautical rope off. But, it is what it is. All right, so moving on to the next day after that spackle has dried, I decided I'm going to go ahead and try this color Buttercream, and it's a Paint Couture chalk paint, and I've never used their chalk paint before, but I really thought this color was a very pretty neutral color, so I bought it and I'm going to test it out. But I am going to paint the entire container with this chalk paint. Okay, and after that I dried it down with my heat gun. I realized I didn't like, the rim was looking a little weird to me, so I decided to take a nail file and just kind of smooth it out just a little bit, get rid of any real excessive high points that was on it. So that's what I did. And then I determined I don't like the 2 textures, the way they look. I didn't think they blended well enough. So I'm going to go ahead and take some white chalk paint and some baking soda, mix that up, and I'm not making it too terribly thick. And I'm going to go ahead and paint the container where we've got those vertical lines in it. And I'm just going to go ahead and put a coat on it. And at the very end of my coat, I'm just going to pounce with my chippy brush to give it some texture. And after I do that and I get it dried down, I think it blends a lot better. I went ahead and grabbed some of my Americana paint from DIY in the cottage colors and a sponge. And I am going to go ahead and dab that color around the rim, a little bit darker on this area than I am going to on the base of it. When I get to the base of it, I'm just going to have very little bit on my sponge and just kind of dab around it. I just want to have a little bit of that greenish color poking through the vase. And this is where I'm just really playing with colors. I mean, if you ever want to play around with colors and see how they go on, and using a plastic container is your best bet. I mean, because the plastic container is an empty container that you're going to throw away anyway, so it's not going to cost you anything to ruin it. So, food for thought. Craft for thought. There you go. After I get that color pounced on there, I am then again going to go ahead and flip my sponge over to the clean side and take some of that white chalk paint, and it's going to go over it with that color, just kind of trying to get it to blend. And I play around with this for probably a good hour. I'm not kidding you. A good hour. And I don't think I'm going to bore you with that. All I can do is say just keep playing with it. I do take some of that white and go back over the rim because I thought that the rim was just a little too dark. So I put some more white in it. And then after I got that dry, I thought, well, you know what? I've also bought this brown sugar glaze from Paint Couture. So I'm going to give it a try just to give it more of an aged look. Like this pot had been sitting out in the garden and it's getting a little weathered. So I take a baby wipe and some of the brown sugar glaze and I just kind of go over it. And I put a very little bit of that glaze on the baby wipe because I don't want it too terribly dark. But I am focusing around the bottom edge and then just kind of wiping that in, and then I'm just trying to blend it into that white the best I can. And once I'm happy with the way it looks, it's time to go ahead and put some florals in there. And I'm just going to take an empty plastic bag and just shove it in there to take up some space, even though I really didn't have to do that because I just took this whole bundle of flowers I had picked up from Hobby Lobby. Aren't they beautiful? And I'm just going to stick them in there after I fold the end up a little bit, fluff them out, and then this project will be complete. And you guys let me know, how did I do on this project? Because I feel like I really struggled with it, but here's the finale.